Hello everyone, thank you for tuning in to yet another episode of Rocket Vlogs. You join me in my home office, which is probably not a space you've really seen before. One of the most common questions I get asked when I post these videos is, how do I get involved? There's a lot of people that watch my channel that don't fly high power rockets that would like to, and this video is kind of going to help you out. Now, the first step to getting involved in high-power rocketry is going to either the Rocketry Association's website or the National Association of Rocketry's website and finding the nearest high-power club to you. Some people like me are fortunate that the nearest high-power club is only an hour away and we have a fantastic altitude waiver, even though I don't usually fly that high, and when I do I tend to have issues, but some people are not as fortunate and have to drive a few hours just to get to the nearest launch site. Hopefully, for you, you get to be nice and close if you're interested in getting into rocketry, and there's also Australian and Canadian rocket clubs and clubs throughout the UK if you're watching this from not within the US. You just gotta do a little research and find your club. Obviously, I don't know a whole lot about clubs outside the US. Now, going back to the question I get asked a lot is, how do I get involved? What's a good first rocket? Where do I start here? And I understand that it can be a little bit intimidating to start with because there's so many different companies that offer so many different things. Some kits are fiberglass and some kits are made of plastic materials. Some kits are made of phenolics, some kits are made of cardboard. And it's hard to decide what you should be doing first, or where a good place to start is your budget. Now, I know a lot of people have seen the prices of some of the motors that I flew, especially throughout 2021, and been kind of shocked by those numbers. However, it doesn't have to be as expensive as I've let it get for me, and many others have let it get for them. In fact, my most recent video where we flew high-power rockets out here with AAA Idaho, I didn't fly anything bigger than an I-motor, and I still had a lot of fun. And smaller I-motors can be had for under $50. So yes, it's still a pretty big investment if coming from the outside of the hobby world per flight. $50 sounds kind of insane, but there are plenty of other hobbies that cost lots more. Believe me, I can compare it to expensive hobbies. I build drift cars and I play the guitar and a couple other expensive things. While fiberglass kits are fantastic and extremely robust, and a lot of you guys have probably stuck with me long enough to see me build these fiberglass kits, for example, the one I stood on in my garage and didn't have any issues with, they are quite expensive in comparison to rockets of similar size made from lighter and cheaper materials. Another benefit to going with cardboard kits as a starting point is they're very light relative to fiberglass, so you can fly them on smaller motors, thus making it more affordable. Now, when people ask where to start if they're trying to get their level 1 high power certification, I always tend to point them, if their budget's restricting them to being in a cardboard kit, I always try to point them towards a 4-inch kit, because 4-inch kits in cardboard are light enough to fly on small H motors and only go, 1,500 feet or so, but usually robust enough, if built right, to fly on J motors. So you could even do your level 2 certification with a 4-inch cardboard kit, and that sentiment is backed actually by my NXRS video earlier this year when I gave away a 4-inch cardboard Patriot that I built on this channel using only 5-minute epoxy in one day, and the new owners flew it on a J motor and it survived. The butter zone, in my opinion, for both budget and efficiency when it comes to motors that can be flown, always go to a 4-inch cardboard kit. A fantastic recommendation I have for a 4-inch cardboard kit that comes at a relatively budget price at $139.95 is the AMW 4-inch White Wolf kit. Now, this kit is great in a lot of ways, and like I said, it costs $140. You can get it on the AMWProx website, but this is a great place to start because it comes with everything you need to build and fly the rocket except for a motor. Alternatively, for a similar price point, AMW also offers a level 1 special, which is a 4-inch cardboard Patriot like I built in the past videos, that comes with an H100 motor for you to do your level 1 certification. You just have to prove that you're a member of the National Association of Rocketry or the AAA Rocketry Association. Either way, both of these kits are available at AMWProx.com, and I want to thank Gloria for giving me this kit to build. And you're going to want to thank Gloria here in a second as well, because at the end of this video, I'm going to tell you how you can win one of these unbuilt kits. They sent me 2, there's another one sitting in my room over there, and after we build this one, I'm going to give you guys a chance to win one simply by commenting with no cost to you. So if you're looking to get into high power rocketry, make sure you stick around throughout the whole video and see how to enter for your chance to win. This is a great kit to get started with because it comes with a shock cord, a parachute, everything you need to just put it together and get it ready to fly. All you need to do is provide a motor and some paint. Now, you guys have seen me build a 4-inch cardboard kit before, like I said with the Patriot, but why don't we build another one, right? It's not gonna hurt, so let's crack into this kit and start getting to work. All right, guys, here's the exploded view of the White Wolf kit. Let's get that parachute in frame a little bit better so you can see it does include everything, including decals, which is really cool. So maybe in this video I'll even paint it for you guys so you can get the full effect. So one thing that makes me want to recommend this kit over other 4-inch cardboard kits is the split fin design. If you're new to rocketry, you don't know the whole split fin stigma is that they whistle very loudly on the way up and make very cool noises when they take off. So stuff like this, you put a very punchy, short burning motor in it, and the whole coast up you get to hear the whistle coming from between the fins, which is just super fun. Now, while I do have some expensive and we'll say aerospace specific epoxies, I do want to keep this within the constraints of the budget of somebody just starting out. So we're going to be building this entire rocket today using only Hobby Shop 5-minute epoxy and a little bit of Loctite thread locker, which I'll show you what that's for here in a bit. All right, so the first thing you'll notice when building a AMW cardboard kit or a Lock Precision cardboard kit is that 2 of the centering rings that come with the kit have holes in them. This is for the hardware that you're going to mount your shock cord to, which is this guy right here. This hole is going to be for the T-nut, which is going to be the backing for your old school mirror clip retention, which is one of my favorite things in the world. It's simple, it's cheap, it's effective, it just works. That's all you really need. So the first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to take your T-nut, you put it in like that, and you're going to want to set it down on something flat and give it a good whack with a mallet. I don't want to hit my desk, so I'm going to step off camera and do it on my workbench. Now we have a spot to thread our mirror clip into, and once we get this all assembled, I'll put a motor case in there just to show you what that looks like. Get a washer on one side, put it through like there, and I only have the super high temp Loctite, but you do want to put some thread locker on there so that this doesn't unthread, because this is going to be inside the rocket once it's built. So if your nut somehow comes unthread, you're going to lose the anchor for your shock cord, which is a very bad thing. This is the stuff I use on exhaust and turbo manifolds on cars, and I've not had anything back out with it. So regular red Loctite will do as well, but if you feel like using the ultra high temp stuff, there you go. Get a wrench on it, give it a good turn, and the orientation of that doesn't really matter on this particular kit, but watch out in the future when building rockets. Some rocket kits will have a spot to do that, but it will not fit your motor tube in some cases. In this case, we're fine, but do keep an eye on that in the future. Sorry for the noise in the background. I have to do my laundry. So what I'm going to do is measure the distance from the bottom of the first fin slot to the top. Alright, we got 11 3/4. Easy enough to remember. Now basically what I'm going to do, since we're not doing internal fillets on this rocket, we're going to decide where we're going to want our top ring. Our bottom ring is going to be flush. That way we have adequate reach from our machine screw provided to retain a motor. So what we're going to do is, we know that this is a 1/4 inch, so we're going to take, that works out really nicely considering we were at 11 3/4, so we're going to mark 12 inches up our motor tube, and that will be where our middle ring goes, so we have clearance for our through the wall fin assembly. Let me sand this out a little bit more, we'll get this guy going, and we'll get some epoxy on. The nice thing is, generally I like to use masking tape to hold things in place, but these rings are so snug that I don't think that's going to be necessary. I'm going to mark that one as well so we know where it's going. Gonna need a fair amount here. We're almost out on this set, but I just went to my local hobby shop and bought a little bit more. I really like the Bob Smith epoxies, especially for these kind of builds, because it comes out clear. There's arguments to be made that like all 5-minute 50/50 epoxies are pretty much the same and they all smell the same, but stuff like the Gorilla ones and everything try like orange or yellow, and I just like the clear stuff. Pro tip I like to tell people when they're building rockets is to here, let me get this in frame a little bit better. Always put the epoxy a little bit lower than you want the ring to wind up. That way some will stay underneath it, and that's what you want, obviously, is the bonding surface itself to have epoxy, but it also pushes the excess epoxy up and makes a fillet of sorts, which is not a bad thing. Alright, slide that guy up. Alright, as always you want to make sure it's nice and flat, and there you can see we've pushed it maybe about 1/8 of an inch past that that mark I made, so that should be great. We're gonna get a little bit more epoxy on there. You can see all the excess stuff there. I like to just take the stick and run a little bit of a fillet around it. Doesn't need to be pretty, no one's going to see it. Now the bottom one's a little bit tricky. You got to be careful not to get epoxy inside the tube. Obviously you don't want that because that's where your motor's going to go. If you do get a little bit in there, it's not a big deal. Just make sure to clean it up before it dries. Otherwise you'll be stuck sanding it so that you can fit a motor in there again, which is never a fun thing. Make sure that the side that doesn't have the T-nut backing is facing out. I've seen that mistake get made plenty of times, and it's an easy enough mistake to make when you're new. Not shaming anybody for mistakes they've made, it happens, but if we can prevent them, that's a great thing. Alright, and just so all this extra epoxy doesn't go to waste, we're going to make ourselves a nice little fillet around the bottom ring. It's especially important when you're doing this flush. You want extra line of defense against the thrust of the motor. This is why a lot of people with bigger rockets will use thrust plates. I don't, just because I put aero packs on everything, and that's a sufficient method. I've proven up to N, so above that I couldn't tell you, but I have flown an N motor with no thrust plate and just an aero pack retainer, transferring the thrust from the motor into the centering ring. This epoxy's already starting to set up, which is great. Now the bottom ring is obviously going to stay put where it needs to be because it's sitting against the table, but as a good line of defense for the top ring, I like to make sure we're still flat. And this is more of an issue when you're using a slower epoxy because it's already starting to tack up. A little bit of masking tape around the bottom of the ring, just like so. That way it'll sit flat against it, and we make sure we stay flat while the epoxy's drying. Now, instinct would tell you to do that with this ring as well. I'm not going to do that, and here's why. For one, it doesn't have the eye bolt weighing one side down that's going to tend to try and drag it down. But two, if on the off chance there's any bit of epoxy in there and we end up putting the tape on it, that tape is going to be epoxy to the motor tube right where the fins meet the motor tube, and I do not want to risk that because mostly I don't want to have to sand it off if that happens. But as of now, everything looks straight and proper. It's already starting to tack up, so I'm gonna let that dry and I'll be back with you guys in a moment. Alright, that's nice and dry now, so we're going to give her a test fit in the airframe. Looks like everything is nice and tight like we like, but not. There you go. Too bad. So now, with that test fit in there, we're going to get that centering ring pushed right up against the edge of the hole there, and we're going to open our fins. 2, 3. And we're going to take it all back apart. One very important thing to watch when you're gluing this in is make sure that that T-nut, the back of that T-nut, is not lined up with any of the fin slots. So now, what I like to do is put a mark on the outside of the tube up towards the top centering ring where it's going to be, so I have a reference for when I'm reaching in there to put epoxy in. Take your shot cord, keep that rubber band. I'll show you why in a sec. We're going to unravel our shot cord. I love that it's purple. Purple is my favorite color. Feed it through like that. Take the other end of the shot cord. Feed it through like that. Whoop. Pull it nice and tight, and there you go. And here's why we keep the rubber band. Throw the rubber band around it. And stuff it inside the motor tube. Alright, now we're ready to glue it in. Alright, so we got our epoxy nice and mixed up. First place we're going to go is that upper spot that I have marked up here. I know you can't see what's going on, but you just want to get a good coat of epoxy all throughout the tube where you're gluing it, and then these other two are super easy because you can just peek through the ring hole, and then for the fin slot you put it right on the inside of those, just on the other side of that, and make sure you're getting a good bead of epoxy going all through there. And then finally, the last one's going to go right here, right on the edge, which you can see. So you can see what I'm doing. I'm just applying a generous amount. Make sure you're consistent all the way around. And then we're going to slide this guy on in. Keeping in mind that we're not going to let that T-nut in the back block one of these fin slots. There he goes. A couple baps. And push it on up. T-nut is not blocking one of the fin slots. Now, if you're a renegade like me, you can do what I'm about to do, which is use the leftover epoxy from that procedure to glue the first fin on. And that's our number 2 one, which is right there. Centering ring is just a little bit high up for that one, which is also a great reason for putting at least one fin on while your motor tube assembly is still drying. That way you can be sure your fins are going to fit. Now, to ensure the fin is nice and straight, I like to keep stuff from moving by taping it down. And then generally, you'll see me tape the fin down with tape as well. But because of this point here, there's not really a good place to put any masking tape to hold it in. But lucky for me, that's a nice tight fin slot, so it's staying put very nicely. And there we go, we got our first fin on and our motor tube assembly installed. Alright guys, we got all 3 of the lower fins on, and it's kind of looking like a pseudo standard arm of sorts, but instead of big strakes, we got big fins. Now I'm going to show you a cool trick so you can always line up the fins on split fin rockets really easily, but first I'm going to tell you how to enter to win the other one. See, I wasn't making it up. There's another one right there. still bagged and ready to rock and roll. Alright, just like last time, the way you're going to enter to win this is first, you need to go press the like button on the video because that actually does help me a lot more than people think. Just like last time, I would prefer that it goes to somebody new in the hobby, or if you win it, you are high power certified already or whatever. It'd be cool if you gave it to someone who was trying to get in the hobby, but I'm not going to tell anyone that they can't win it and keep it. If you win it, it's yours. You do what you want. I just would like to see it go to someone who's trying to get started. Tell me what club you would fly it at, what motor you would fly it on, and press the like button on the video, and you're automatically entered to win this once I hit 10,000 subscribers. So if you're watching this and you're not subscribed yet, please press the subscribe button. I'm going to take 2 popsicle sticks, or for a kit this big, rulers would be preferred. Just like some regular wooden rulers. And we're going to set this up. Get the sticks pretty much as close to lined up perfectly with each other as we can get. And then we're going to clamp them to the fin. Just like that. Then we're going to take our epoxy, run it on the root of our upper fin. Alright, now make sure the fin's seated all the way in, and then this clamp and now here's a good example of why you'd want to use something longer if you can. As you can see, it's kind of trying to pull the forward root of the fin up just a hair, maybe like a 1/16 of an inch. I don't know how well you can see that. Try and get it in its frame as much as possible, but luckily it's only 5-minute epoxy, so it'll start to tack up here in a second. And actually, I'm willing to bet if I take this clamp off, that fin's going to stay lined up pretty good just with those sticks holding it there. Looks just about perfect to me. So here's a good little lesson to teach. This fin was a little bit difficult to get both the leading and trailing edges to actually seat against the body tube. I think it's just because the slot's a little thin for the fin material, and I could have drug it out a little bit and sanded it and got it to fit better. But you just kind of got to finagle it a little bit, and if it is, you know, maybe a 1/16 of an inch or less away from the airframe tube, that gap's going to get taken up by fillets and be unnoticeable by the time the rocket's painted. Just first and foremost, make sure that the root of the fin that's mounted to the body tube is very flat and secure and has plenty of epoxy. And then like I said, if these aren't perfectly flush with the tube, it's not going to be the end of the world for you. But there you go, that's the 6th and final fin on. So I'm going to let this dry for about an hour just to make sure all this epoxy sits very properly before I start doing fillets.
1 hour later.
I'm going to show you guys a cool trick I learned from Rocketry icon Crazy Jim Hendrickson. If you want nice tape lines for your fillets, and you can see I sanded down here a little bit, I don't know if that even shows on camera very well, but if you want tape lines for your fillets without running into putting the tape too far in and then having hard lines to sand, all you do is you take whatever you'll be using to make your fillets. In my case, it's this big tongue depressor, and you use a Sharpie or pen or marker of your choice, really. Apply a good amount of pressure. And there you go. Now you got mark where to put your tape at. If there's any marking to be had, certainly. And if this is your first high power build and you're gonna use hobby epoxy, which is fine for fillets, I just highly recommend you go to 30-minute, because doing this with 5-minute, if you don't know what you're doing and you've never done it before, can be a very stressful situation and can also end with some pretty unsatisfactory results. So now, since this epoxy is going to dry pretty quick, we're going to take all this tape off, just in case we got a little underneath it or whatever. You do not want the tape to be a permanent fixture of your rocket. And that's all there is to it. Alright, everybody puts an aero pack retainer on everything all the time now, which I'm not knocking. I love aero pack retainers, and most of my rockets have them. However, if you're trying to fly on a budget, there's no better solution than this. Motor case goes in, you take your screw, you take your mirror clip, you take your magnetic screwdriver and pull your screw back out. You line that up with your T-nut. Tighten it, and there you go. Motor's not coming out. That's all you do. You can actually see there's some holes drilled in this rear closure. This is an old case, and people used to do that as well. They would run like small wires or small clips into the actual closure, but that is a thing of the high power rocketry past. This is as well, but it's still part of the high power rocketry present. I think a lot of people forget about that. So mirror clips, great retention systems. Alright, during the last set of fillets, which I did not film, I had enough excess epoxy left over to just go ahead and glue this bulkhead in. Same procedure as with the centering ring. 2 washers, 2 nuts, a bit of thread locker, tighten as best you can. But what I like to do, recess the bulkhead about 1/4 of an inch or so into the coupler. That way you have enough room to add a fillet on the front side, because this is the side that's going to be getting tugged on. So we're just going to add a quick epoxy fillet there. It's not pretty, but it's pretty functional. Alright, so once that dries, this goes into the upper section. The nose cone goes on top of that. If you don't ever plan on having the option to expand it for electronics, you can glue the coupler in and glue the nose cone in place. However, I tend to just leave stuff friction fit or put pins in them just to keep it together, so that if I ever change my mind, I can replace this coupler with an electronics bay and then use the tube and nose cone provided with the original kit and not have to buy a new one since I glued it in. So you feel free to glue it in if that's how you want to do it, and you're just going to fly a motor deploy forever. That's perfectly fine. I love motor deploy flights. They're simple and easy. I just like to leave the option open just cause. Alright, remember that shock cord we tucked into the motor tube earlier? It's been out of your way the whole time, right? That's why we do that. Now though, we're going to set it free. We're going to take the quick link provided with the kit. Put our shock cord on there. Get our parachute. These lines are a dead giveaway that Lock Precision was involved. And put those on like so. You definitely want to put the parachute up very high, just like that on this kit especially, because you don't want this shock cord getting tangled between the 2 sets of fins. It can and will happen. Alright guys, it's a little bit too big to fit in the frame, but there you go. That is the basic construction of the AMW 4-inch White Wolf, and you can follow those same instructions for the bigger ones, for the 5.5 inch, 7.5 inch, the 3 inch, any AMW cardboard kit. You can substitute whatever epoxy you'd like, and if you've got certain techniques or build methods that you want to use instead, that's fine, but this gets the job done. I wouldn't hesitate to put a J motor in this rocket, especially with the extra weight from these big old second set of fins. if that little Patriot handled the J, no problem. This thing would be awesome on a J350 or a J420. While you could just slap rail buttons on it as is and go fly, I am going to finish this, and so that's not the end of this video, but this is the end of the main construction. And yeah, I'll see you guys when it's sunny outside and I can start painting it. If you guys are familiar with my channel, you've probably seen me spend a lot of time making a lot of my paint jobs look as good as I possibly can. And I take a lot of solace in doing builds like this where I just let it go, and however it comes out is how it comes out. One of the big issues with using 5-minute epoxy for fillets is you can't really sand it all that well. So what you want to do is, you know, make them as nice as possible for spraying paint right over top of them, which is kind of what I did. The beautiful part about the budget and the beautiful part of getting into high power rocketry is that you don't have to make it perfect. It doesn't have to look beautiful. It doesn't have to be museum quality. It just has to be put together. And those chunky fillets and the unfilled body spirals and the sanding marks on the nose cone are not going to affect the way this thing flies. And when it's got an I-motor in it and it's 150 feet away, nobody's going to know the difference. So make your high power rocketry experience what you want it to be. I take a lot of pride in a lot of my rockets looking as good as they possibly can, but there's something to be said about just enjoying spending a day building a high power rocket and painting it without really caring all that much. Especially when we have the decals on there, no one's gonna say anything. So feel free to come ridicule it at a launch if you see me in person and have this rocket with me. It's not gonna hurt my feelings. We did this in one day, and I just wanted to prove to you guys that it can be done on a budget. You don't need expensive fancy epoxy. You don't need a paint booth. You don't need to have the most meticulous building skills and the patience of a saint to get into this hobby. You can just do it. So let's let this coat of primer dry. I'll do a couple more coats of primer. We'll start spraying white, and then that's pretty much the end of it. Alright guys, we got one coat of white paint on her. I am out of white paint and it didn't quite cover as well as I was hoping it would, so I'm going to let that dry overnight. I'll wet sand it, and I will put a couple more coats of white on there just to fill in the wood grain a little bit more. I know I just had a whole spiel about that, but it's still my rocket and I'm still going to finish it how I want. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you want to see the finished product, I will be out soon with a super cut version of this with me putting the decals on, the rail buttons, everything, and doing just a quick voiceover, shorter format video for AMW, Robert, and Gloria to use as their instruction video for building these kits. But for now, that's how she sits. It's pretty much done. We could fly it right now if we wanted, just throw some rail buttons on it, but thank you guys very much for watching. Don't forget to comment what club you fly at and what motor you would put in this kit if you want it, and hit the like button on the video for your chance to win this. We are almost at 10,000 subscribers. If you're watching this and you're not subscribed, please hit the subscribe button. When we hit 10,000, I'm going to give one of these away. And most importantly, if you want to help support the channel and keep these videos coming, check out patreon.com/rocketvlogs or rocketvlogs.com. I have merch and stuff available through Teespring. It's directly drop shipped from them, so it's hands off from me, so you get it in a timely manner. These kits do still cost me about 75 bucks to ship if it's going all the way across the country, and that's just a fee that I have to eat in order to give you guys one, but I do appreciate all the help and support, and I'll see you next time.